The first time it happened, Evan Hale thought the translator had failed. He was standing in a wide, quiet hall on Horizon Station, a place built to feel neutral to every species that passed through it. The walls shifted color slowly, adjusting to the comfort ranges of humans and aliens alike. Long tables curved in a circle, and at each one sat representatives from different worlds. Evan had been to meetings like this before. They were usually careful, slow, and very boring. This one was supposed to be the same. Saleth stood across from him, tall and calm, her posture straight in a way that looked practiced rather than stiff. Her species did not have hair like humans. Instead, faint lines of light moved under her skin, changing gently as she breathed. Evan had been told it was a sign of attention. She had been watching him for most of the session. Evan tried not to notice. When the chair of the symposium asked if there were any final statements, Sayelith stepped forward. The room quieted at once. Her people did not speak often in large groups. She inclined her head slightly toward Evan. "I have completed my selection," she said. The translator hummed softly in Evan's ear, turning the words into clear, plain English. "My species selects one mate for life," Saleth continued.
"I have selected this human." Every sound in the room vanished. Evan felt heat rush to his face.
He looked around, waiting for someone to laugh, or cough, or say something. A few humans did smile, awkward and unsure. One ambassador let out a small, surprised chuckle. Evan raised his hands without thinking.
"I'm sorry," he said quickly. "There must be a mistake."
"I think the word mate." "There is no mistake," Saleth said. Her voice was not loud, but it was steady. The lights beneath her skin did not flicker. The chair cleared their throat and said something polite about cultural expressions and thanked Saleth for her contribution. The meeting moved on, slowly and carefully, as if everyone had decided at the same time to pretend nothing strange had happened. Evan sat back down, his heart pounding. This could not be real. It had to be a misunderstanding. Aliens did not just choose human diplomats as lifelong partners during first contact meetings. That was not how reality worked. After the session ended, Evan gathered his notes and tried to leave quickly. He almost made it to the exit before Saleth appeared beside him.
"I will require your presence for logistical alignment," she said. Evan stopped walking.
"I what?"
She tilted her head slightly. "Shared habitation, time coordination, nutritional overlap." "There are forms. Forms!" Evan let out a weak laugh. "Listen, Saleth, I think something went very wrong here. I'm honored, truly. But humans don't do that. Not like that."
"You don't just pick someone."
Saleth watched him closely. "You do not?"
"No," Evan said. "We talk."
"We choose. We agree."
"It takes time."
"Yes," she said.
"That is why I observed you for so long."
Evan stared at her. "Observed me? For 3 of your years," she said.
"Your behavior patterns were consistent. That did not help his panic. He excused himself as politely as he could and made his way back to the human delegation offices."
The door slid shut behind him, and the familiar sound of human voices and machines grounded him a little. "Doctor." Lena Ortiz was already there, tapping rapidly at a screen. She looked up when Evan entered and raised an eyebrow. "So," she said, "care to explain why an alien scientist just announced you as her forever person in front of half the galaxy?" Evan dropped into a chair. "Please tell me the translator glitched." Lena's expression softened. It didn't. He covered his face with his hands. Over the next few hours, the situation only became stranger. Requests began arriving in the system. Shared quarters proposals, schedule alignment notices, cultural bonding acknowledgments. They were all marked as routine. "What does routine mean to them?" Evan asked. "It means this is normal," Lena said quietly. "For them." Evan leaned back and stared at the ceiling. I didn't agree to anything. She doesn't think you need to, Lena replied. From what we can tell, selection is unilateral. Consent is assumed to be permanent once given. I didn't give consent, Evan said. Lena hesitated. You smiled at her. You answered her questions. You invited her to observe human briefings.
Evan frowned. That's just being polite. Lena sighed.
For her species, politeness carries weight. That evening, Evan found Salith waiting outside his assigned quarters. She stood perfectly still, as if she had been there for a long time. You did not arrive at the habitation transfer, she said. I didn't agree to move, Evan replied. She nodded. I anticipated resistance. Humans value verbal confirmation. Yes, Evan said. We do. Then I will ask, she said. Will you allow proximity while we resolve this? He hesitated. She waited, patient and silent. Yes, he said finally. We can talk. Inside, Silith examined the small human living space with interest. She did not touch anything without permission. She asked questions about objects that seemed meaningless to Evan. A mug, a chair, a picture frame.
You keep images of people who are not present, she observed. They matter to me, Evan said.
So, do you? She replied. That stopped him. They sat across from each other, the space between them, careful and respectful. Salith folded her hands the way she had learned humans did during serious talks. I will clarify, she said. My species does not select based on emotion.
We select based on long-term stability.
Stability?
Evan echoed. Yes.
You form bonds without certainty. You accept loss as a possibility and still commit. This is rare. Evan swallowed.
It's also painful. Salith's lights dimmed slightly. Pain does not invalidate the bond.
It proves its depth.
He did not know how to answer that. I did not intend to cause distress, she continued.
If my selection harms you, I will reconsider. Something about her tone made Evan look up sharply. You would? Yes, she said. The bond must be viable. He studied her face, searching for pressure or expectation. There was none.
Only openness. I don't even know you, he said quietly.
You will, she replied, if you choose to. That night, Evan did not sleep much. He lay awake thinking about how easily everything had shifted, how one calm statement had changed the way the galaxy looked at him. By morning, news had spread. Humans were being asked questions they had never faced before. About commitment, about loyalty, about how they treated those they chose. Evan met Salith again in a shared garden space. Artificial sunlight warmed the air. She stood among unfamiliar plants, watching leaves move. I have paused all formal processes, she told him, until you decide. Thank you, Evan said. She inclined her head. I will wait. As Evan walked away, he realized something unsettling. She was not waiting out of obligation. She was waiting because she believed he would choose. By the third day, Evan realized the galaxy was no longer looking at him as just a human diplomat. It was looking at him as a question. He felt it in the pauses that followed his words, in the careful way other species studied his expressions, in how conversations bent slightly around his presence. Something had shifted, and no one knew yet what shape it would take, including Evan. Salith kept her distance just as she had promised. She did not appear outside his quarters again. She did not send more requests. Instead, she waited in shared spaces, visible but never demanding. When Evan entered a room, she acknowledged him with a calm nod and returned to her work. That restraint made things harder, not easier. Human leadership arrived within the week. Advisors, analysts, and cultural experts filled the station with quiet urgency. Evan was called into meeting after meeting, each one trying to understand what had already happened. "You are not obligated," one official said firmly. "But we also can't ignore the impact," another added. Evan sat at the center of it all, hands folded, feeling strangely removed from his own life.
"She didn't trap me," he said. "She asked."
In her way. That's the problem, Lena replied.
"Her way carries weight. Her people see this as settled."
"And the rest of the galaxy is watching how humans respond," another advisor said. "If we reject this carelessly, it reflects on all of us."
Evan rubbed his temples.
"So I'm a symbol now."
"Yes," Lena said gently. "But you're still a person first." That night, Evan walked the long outer corridor of the station. Beyond the reinforced glass, stars drifted slowly, distant and indifferent. He wondered how many choices in history had begun this quietly. Salith stood near the observation window, her attention on the darkness outside. She did not turn when Evan approached.
"You are troubled," she said. "Everyone is," Evan replied.
"Including me." She turned then, the faint light under her skin shifting softly. "I am aware that my selection has created imbalance." "You didn't do anything wrong," Evan said. "You just did something big." She considered that. "Humans fear permanence." Evan laughed once quietly. "We fear pretending permanence is guaranteed." Salith nodded. "That difference is why my people find you remarkable." They stood side by side, not touching. The silence between them was not empty. It felt careful.
"I was chosen," Evan said slowly. "But I don't know why me." "I do," Salith replied.
She told him then about her species in more detail than she ever had before. About how they lived long lives with few emotional extremes. How their bonds were efficient, stable, and predictable. How they admired continuity above all else. "And then we observed humans," she said. Evan listened as she described human behavior through alien eyes. How humans formed families without biological certainty. How they raised children, not guaranteed to carry their genes. How they stayed with friends and partners through change, illness, and loss. "You attach value to individuals, not outcomes," Salith said.
"That is unsettling and admirable."
Evan swallowed. "We fail at it all the time." "Yes," she agreed. "And you continue." That, she explained, was why she had chosen him. Not because he was exceptional by human standards, but because he was consistent, kind when tired, honest when uncertain, willing to admit when he did not know the answer.
"My species predicts compatibility," she said.
"Humans create it." The words stayed with him long after they parted. The next days brought visitors, not hostile, curious. An envoy from a crystalline species asked Evan how humans handled disagreement within bonds. A diplomat from a long-lived hive culture asked how humans coped when bonds ended. Evan answered as honestly as he could. "We talk," he said. "We fail. We try again." Some of them seemed disturbed by that. Others looked thoughtful. Salith observed quietly, never speaking unless asked. When she did, she always deferred to Evan's explanation of humanity, even when she could have spoken for him. That, too, was noticed. One evening, Evan found her sitting alone in the garden again, hands resting in her lap.
"They're studying you," he said. "They are studying you," she corrected.
He sat across from her. "Do you regret choosing me?" she answered without delay. "No, but you'd accept it if I said no."
"Yes," she said, "because choice matters to you."
"And what matters to you matters to me." Evan felt something loosen in his chest at that. He realized then that she had never once acted as if he owed her anything. The pressure came from everywhere else. Human media began speculating. Alien observers began writing reports. Philosophers weighed in on what it meant that humans could inspire lifelong bonds without guarantees. Evan tried to stay grounded. He kept his routines. He drank his coffee. He called his sister back on Earth and carefully avoided explaining why half the galaxy suddenly knew his name. One night, unable to sleep, he sent Salith a message.
Can we talk? She arrived moments later, as if she had been waiting. I'm afraid, Evan admitted once they were seated. Of me? She asked. No, he said.
Of what this represents, of being seen as something I'm not. She listened, completely still. You fear becoming an idea instead of a person, she said. Yes. She leaned forward slightly. Then do not accept the bond for them. Accept it only if it is right for you. I don't know yet, Evan said.
That is acceptable, she replied. My people believe certainty must precede commitment.
Humans allow commitment to create certainty. Evan looked at her, surprised. You've been learning, he said. Yes, she said. From you. The next morning, a formal inquiry arrived from Silas' homeworld. It was not a demand. It was a question. Had the human been coerced? Evan read it 3 times. The galaxy was not assuming ownership. It was asking about consent. He met Salith in the council chamber to discuss a response. I did not request this, she said quietly. But I support it. Evan exhaled. Thank you. They drafted a reply together. Simple, clear, honest. The bond was not finalized. The human had not agreed. The choice remained open. The response sent ripples outward. For the first time, other species began asking whether their own bonding systems allowed room for reconsideration. Evan felt a strange weight lift. That evening, he stood alone again at the observation window. Salith joined him, leaving a respectful distance. I am still here, she said, regardless of your decision. I know, Evan replied. He watched the stars and realized something important. Salith had chosen him because humans chose every day. And now, for the first time, the galaxy was watching a human decide not out of fear, duty, or expectation, but out of honest consideration. The choice was still ahead, and somehow, that made all the difference. By the time Evan realized the station schedules were being rewritten around him, it was already too late to pretend this was private. Corridors that once required long walks were now coincidentally aligned with his route. Meetings were adjusted so Salith would never be required to choose between her duties and proximity. No one said it out loud, but the station itself had begun to treat their unresolved bond as important. Evan did not like that. He noticed at first when a junior coordinator apologized for a delay. We were waiting to confirm your availability, she said, careful and nervous.
My availability? Evan asked. For what? For
Alignment, she replied, as if the word explained everything. Evan left the office with a tight feeling in his chest.
This was exactly what he had feared. Not pressure from Salith, but pressure from systems, from expectations, from quiet assumptions that his answer was already written. He found Salith in a research wing later that day, surrounded by floating data panels. She dismissed them the moment she saw his expression.
This is becoming larger than it should be, Evan said without sitting. Yes, she replied.
I have noticed.
You said your people value stability, he continued.
But this doesn't feel stable. It feels like momentum. Salith considered that.
Momentum can be mistaken for destiny.
Exactly, Evan said. And humans are bad at stopping once something starts moving. She looked at him closely.
Then we will stop it.
She issued the order herself. Station systems were instructed to remove all special considerations related to the bond. No more adjusted schedules. No more assumptions. No more quiet favors. The reaction was immediate. Confusion spread. Questions followed. Several non-human delegates requested clarification. One asked directly whether the human was rejecting the bond. Evan was present when Saleth answered. "No," she said calmly. "The human is choosing freely. That requires space." The word freely carried weight. After that, something changed. The attention did not vanish, but it softened. Observers stopped watching for a conclusion and began watching for a process. Evan felt like he could breathe again. They began spending time together, not as symbols, but as individuals, walking through the gardens, sharing meals designed to be safe for both species, talking about small things. Saleth asked about Evan's childhood. He told her about rainy afternoons, about learning to cook badly, about friendships that had faded without turning bitter. "Humans accept change as natural," she said. "My people resist it. We don't like it," Evan replied. "We just know it happens anyway." She told him about her first years of training, how her people prepared for a single bond, their entire lives, how the idea of choosing wrong was more frightening than never choosing at all. "And yet you chose me," Evan said. "Yes," she replied, "because you are not afraid of choosing wrong." That night, Evan received a message from Earth. It was not an order. It was a request. Human leadership wanted him to formally clarify his position soon, not to rush him, but because uncertainty itself was becoming a factor in interstellar relations. He understood. Waiting was also a choice. He asked Saleth to meet him in the council chamber. The room was empty when they arrived, the long curved seats unoccupied. "I don't want to hurt you," Evan said. "You will not," she replied, "unless you lie. I don't want to misrepresent humanity," he added. "Then speak as yourself," she said. "You are one of them." He paced slowly as he talked, words coming carefully. He spoke about how humans approached commitment, how they promised knowing they might fail, how love was not proven by permanence alone, but by effort. "My fear," he admitted, "is that if I say yes because the galaxy expects it, then it's not really a yes." Saleth listened, her expression open. "And if I say no," Evan continued, "because I'm afraid of what yes means, then that's not honest either." She stood and walked closer, stopping well within respectful distance. "My people believe selection creates obligation," she said. "You believe obligation should never exist without choice." "Yes," Evan said. She nodded. "Then allow me to say something that my species has never said." She paused, as if the words themselves required careful handling. "I chose you," she said. "But I do not require you." Evan felt his throat tighten. "If you decide that your path does not include me," she continued, "I will grieve. And I will adapt. That is my choice." Silence filled the chamber. Evan realized then that the risk was no longer one-sided. She was not offering certainty. She was offering herself. The next day, the testing began. Not openly. Quietly, species known for strict hierarchies asked Evan informal questions. Species with rigid mating laws observed how Saleth deferred to him without diminishing herself. Species that valued efficiency watched how much time humans spent talking instead of deciding. And they noticed something strange. The human was not rushing. The alien was not demanding. The bond, unfinished, was still strong. Reports began circulating. Humans were described as choice-driven, as emotionally inefficient but resilient, as capable of sustaining connection without formal enforcement. Evan read one summary and laughed softly. "That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said about us." Saleth did not laugh, but her lights warmed. A week later, Evan was invited to speak before a small interspecies forum, not about the bond itself, but about human decision-making. He stood alone at the center of the room, aware that Salith was watching from the edge. "We don't have a special process," he said simply. "We don't know the future. We don't calculate compatibility perfectly." Several delegates shifted, uncomfortable. "We choose," Evan continued. "And then we keep choosing. Some days we fail. Some days we don't. But the choosing matters." When he finished, no one spoke for a long moment. Then a delegate from a long-lived species asked, "What happens when you stop choosing?" Evan answered honestly,
"Then the bond ends, and it hurts."
"But we don't pretend the bond was meaningless." That answer traveled farther than any declaration could have. Later that evening, Evan found Salith waiting in the garden again. The artificial sky above them shifted slowly toward night.
"You spoke well," she said.
I was terrified,
He replied.
"Yes," she said. "That is how I knew you were honest." They walked together, steps matching without effort.
"I think," Evan said slowly, "that if I say yes, it has to be because I want to build something, not because it already exists." Salith stopped walking. "That is acceptable." He turned to face her. "But it won't look like what your species expects."
It will not, she agreed. It will change, he said.
"Yes, it might fail," he said quietly. Salith met his eyes. So might everything worth doing. The lights beneath her skin brightened, not with certainty, but with resolve. Evan realized then that the galaxy was no longer watching for a perfect answer. It was watching to see if a human would step forward, knowing there were no guarantees. And for the first time, Evan felt ready to decide, not because the future was clear, but because it wasn't. The tests did not stop after Evan's speech. They simply became quieter. No one announced them. No questions were labeled as challenges. Instead, situations appeared that asked, without asking. A trade council requested that Evan and Salith attend a long negotiation together, one known for exhausting schedules and slow progress. A cultural forum invited them to separate panels on the same day, far apart in the station, forcing coordination without obligation. A scientific delegation asked Salith to return briefly to her homeworld, knowing Evan could not follow. None of it was hostile. All of it was deliberate. Evan noticed first how often people watched what he did when Salith was not present, how he spoke of her when she could not hear, whether his tone changed. Whether he acted relieved or strained, Salith noticed how often others watched her restraint. She did not rush to Evan's side when he entered a room. She did not correct others when they assumed too much. She did not speak for him, even when silence might have been easier. They were being measured not by closeness, but by respect. The negotiation was the hardest. It stretched across 12 long hours, broken only by short pauses. The room was filled with slow voices and careful words. Evan felt his attention slipping more than once. He noticed Salith watching him from across the table. Not with concern, but with awareness. When a break was finally called, Evan leaned back and rubbed his eyes. "You don't have to stay," he said quietly.
"This isn't your responsibility."
"It is not," she agreed, "but I wish to." She did not sit closer. She did not offer comfort. She simply remained present. Observers noticed. Later, a delegate from a rigidly bonded species asked Evan a direct question.
If your bond is not enforced, why remain when difficulty arises? Evan answered honestly, because leaving is always an option.
That's what makes staying meaningful. The delegate did not reply, but they took careful notes. The separation came next. Silas' homeworld requested her presence for a brief consultation. It was framed as optional. It was not. Evan helped her prepare without comment. He did not ask her to stay. He did not assume she would return. At the departure gate, she paused. "I will return in 5 cycles," she said, "unless you ask me not to." Evan shook his head. "Go? She studied his face. "You are not afraid I will change my mind." "I am," he admitted. "But that's yours to change." She inclined her head and boarded the vessel. The station felt quieter without her. Evan threw himself into work. Meetings, reports, conversations that circled around the same themes: choice, autonomy, human unpredictability. Some species were unsettled by it. Others were fascinated. A representative from a long unbroken lineage asked Evan, "Why would anyone accept a bond that could end?" Evan replied, "Because it could also grow." During Saleth's absence, Evan received a private message from an observer group. They were not a government. They were not a council.
They were something older. They ask one question.
"If the bond weakens, will you abandon it?" Evan stared at the message for a long time before answering. "I don't know," he wrote back.
"But if I do, it won't be because it was inconvenient." That answer spread.
When Saleth returned, there was no dramatic reunion, no rush, no display. She found Evan in the garden, reading. "I returned," she said. "I see that," he replied, smiling. They walked together. She told him of her homeworld's reaction, of confusion, of quiet debate, of elders asking questions they had never asked before. They asked if renewal was possible, she said.
Evan stopped walking. "Renewal?" "Yes," she said.
"A bond reaffirmed by choice, not assumption." "That's new. For us," she agreed. "For you, it is ordinary." That word followed them into the next phase. Ordinary. They shared meals. They argued gently about ideas. They learned each other's limits. Evan learned when Saleth needed silence. Saleth learned when Evan needed reassurance, even if he did not ask. And still, the galaxy watched. A cultural report summarized it best.
"The human bond is a liability," it read. "It is inefficient.
It lacks enforcement. It depends on continued effort." The same report ended with another line. "This liability appears to be its strength." Other species began to experiment. Small changes at first, allowing delayed confirmations, introducing language for reconsideration, observing outcomes. Not all succeeded, but none could ignore the results. Evan felt the weight of it more than once. He was careful not to claim credit. He did not speak as a representative of humanity unless asked. He did not pretend to understand what this would mean long term. One evening, after a long day, he admitted his exhaustion to Saleth. "I didn't ask for this," he said quietly.
"I know," she replied. "I just wanted to do the right thing."
She considered that.
That is why this works. He looked at her. "You still think this works?" "Yes," she said.
"Because it is still being chosen." There were moments of doubt. Evan worried about what would happen years from now. Saleth worried about how her people would see her if this path failed. Neither pretended those fears did not exist. They talked about them instead. That, too, was observed. A visiting scholar summarized it during a private discussion. "You do not minimize risk," they said. "You acknowledge it and proceed anyway." Evan nodded. "That's kind of our thing." The final test came without warning. A formal proposal was submitted to classify the human-Saleth bond as a recognized interspecies framework. It would give it status, protection, meaning. It would also turn it into a model. Evan read the proposal twice, then closed it.
"This would make us a symbol forever," he said.
"Yes," Saleth replied.
"And we'd lose privacy?"
"Yes. And choice would become expected." She was silent for a long moment.
"Then we should refuse,"
she said. Evan looked up, surprised. "You're sure?" "Yes," she said. "If this is to mean anything, it cannot be replicated by force." They declined the proposal together. The reaction was mixed. Some were disappointed. Others were relieved. But the message was clear. Humans could inspire change without demanding it. That night, Evan and Salith stood again at the observation window, stars drifting slowly beyond. "We are still unfinished," Evan said. "Yes," she replied. "We may always be." She turned to him. "Then we will always be choosing." For the first time, Evan understood why others found that idea so powerful. Not because it was perfect, but because it was honest. And somewhere across the galaxy, civilizations that had never questioned permanence began, quietly to do so, because a human and an alien had shown that love without obligation could still hold strong. The final choice was close now, not as an ending, but as a beginning. The assembly hall was fuller than Evan had ever seen it. No banners marked the occasion, no special lighting, no ceremony. That alone made it feel heavier than any formal event. Delegates from dozens of species filled the curved seats, their attention focused on the open space at the center. Evan stood there, alone at first. Salith waited at the edge, not beside him, not behind him. Close enough to be seen, far enough to make the point clear. This was not her moment to speak. This was his. The chair of the assembly did not call for silence. It was not needed. The room was already quiet. "Human Evan Hale," the chair said, voice steady.
"You have been observed, studied,
discussed. Your unresolved bond has influenced interstellar dialogue in ways few events ever have."
Evan felt his pulse in his ears. He did not look at Salith yet.
"You are not required to declare anything today," the chair continued, "but many here have requested clarity."
Not for policy, for understanding. Evan took a slow breath. He thought of Earth, of his sister, of quiet mornings and ordinary choices. He thought of Salith's patience, of her refusal to claim what had not been freely given. He spoke.
"I didn't plan any of this," Evan said.
His voice carried without effort.
"I didn't come here to represent humanity's idea of love or commitment.
I just tried to be honest." He looked around the room.
"When Salith chose me, I panicked," he admitted, "because her people see bonds as permanent by design.
Humans don't."
Some delegates shifted. Others leaned forward.
"We know things can change," Evan continued. "We know people can grow apart."
"We still choose to care. We still promise, even knowing the promise might hurt later." He finally turned and looked at Salith.
"And what surprised me,"
he said, "was that she listened. She didn't demand certainty. She didn't take my hesitation as rejection." Salith met his eyes, calm and open.
"She let me be human." Evan turned back to the assembly.
"You've been watching to see if humans would run from responsibility," he said, "or if we'd accept it without question."
The truth is, we do neither. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. We don't treat commitment as a chain. We treat it as a choice that has to be made again and again. Silence filled the hall.
"That makes us unreliable," Evan said, "and it makes us honest."
The chair inclined their head slightly.
"And your choice, human Evan Hale?" Evan felt the weight of that question settle, not as pressure, but as focus. He did not answer immediately.
Instead, he walked toward Salith. The entire room watched him cross the open space. He stopped at a respectful distance, close enough to speak softly, far enough to leave room for her answer. "I'm still afraid," Evan said quietly, so only she could hear.
"I don't know what this looks like in 10 years. Or 50.
Salith's lights shifted gently.
"Neither do I. I can't promise permanence," he said. "Not the way your people understand it."
"I know," she replied.
"But I can promise effort," Evan said. I can't promise honesty.
And I can promise that if I stay, it will be because I want to, not because I have to. Salith was silent for a long moment. Then she did something no one expected. She stepped forward, not into his space, not into his arms. She simply stood beside him.
In my culture, she said, her voice now carrying to the hall, selection ends uncertainty.
Among humans, it begins dialogue. She turned slightly toward him. I was chosen to choose once, she continued.
I now understand that choice can be renewed.
She looked at Evan. Will you choose with me? She asked, knowing the choice will never be finished. Evan did not answer with words at first. He reached out his hand. Not in a binding gesture. Not a claim. An invitation. Salith placed her hand in his. The lights beneath her skin did not flare with certainty. They warmed. Yes, Evan said. The sound that followed was not applause. Many species did not clap. It was something quieter, a collective shift, a release of held breath. The chair spoke again. Let it be recorded, they said, that the human has accepted, not a permanent bond, but a chosen one. That phrasing spread faster than any official declaration. In the days that followed, nothing dramatic happened. There were no sudden treaties, no new laws, no declarations of a new age. Instead, small things changed. Species that had never questioned lifelong bonds began adding language for renewal. Cultures that enforced pairing allowed space for refusal. Observers rewrote old assumptions about strength and weakness. Humanity was not labeled perfect. It was labeled willing. Evan and Salith returned to ordinary life on the station. Work resumed. Schedules filled. Meals were shared. They argued sometimes, misunderstood each other, learned, and when doubt appeared, it was spoken aloud instead of hidden. One evening, much later, Evan sat with Salith in the garden as artificial stars brightened above them.
Do you ever regret choosing me? He asked.
Salith considered the question carefully. No, she said.
I chose you once. I choose you still.
Evan smiled.
That's the part humans care about. She tilted her head. Then perhaps my species will learn something from yours. And maybe we'll learn something from yours too, Evan replied.
Across the galaxy, reports continued to circulate. Not about dominance, not about power, about trust, about a species that did not rely on certainty to commit. About a bond that held, not because it was enforced, but because it was renewed. And for the first time, humanity was known not for its technology, or its ambition, or its stubborn survival, but for something far stranger. Humans were the species that chose love without guarantees, and kept choosing anyway.